How does a single minute of mental preparation transform an ordinary person into an extraordinary warrior? In 480 BCE, at the narrow coastal pass of Thermopylae, King Leonidas and his 300 Spartan warriors demonstrated precisely this type of psychological resilience as they faced the overwhelming Persian force of King Xerxes. Their legendary last stand, though ending in their deaths, delayed the Persian advance long enough to ultimately save Greek civilization, and perhaps the foundations of Western democracy itself. The Spartan method of psychological preparation was not merely legend but a documented practice rooted in their unique cultural training system known as the agoge. This rigorous military education began when boys were just 7 years old and continued throughout their lives, creating warriors whose mental fortitude became as impenetrable as their bronze shields. General Gylippus Farsight, the brilliant Spartan commander who later saved Syracuse from Athenian conquest during the Peloponnesian War, 415 to 413 BCE, once explained the essential mental technique that allowed Spartan hoplites to remain calm in the chaos of battle. Historical records from Plutarch and Thucydides describe how Gylippus instructed his men to practice a specific breathing and visualization ritual in the moments before combat, a practice we can accurately reconstruct today. When the enemy appears before you, Gylippus reportedly told his soldiers, take 60 steady breaths. During this single minute, recall your training, accept your mortality, and visualize victory through discipline. Death may come today or in 50 years, this is not for us to decide. What matters is how we face the enemy before us. This practice, breathing deeply while mentally rehearsing training and accepting one's mortality, became a cornerstone of Spartan military psychology. Archaeological evidence from Spartan military camps shows designated spaces where warriors would gather before battle, suggesting ritualized preparation areas for this mental conditioning. The Spartan state itself was organized around creating citizens who could implement this psychological technique effectively. Unlike Athens with its direct democracy, Sparta developed a mixed constitution combining monarchy, 2 kings, oligarchy, a council of elders called the Gerousia, and limited democracy, an assembly of citizens. This political structure, documented by Aristotle in his Politics, created stability that allowed Sparta to focus on military excellence rather than political infighting. For over 4 centuries, from approximately 600 BCE to 200 BCE, this system produced warriors of legendary psychological resilience. The Battle of Mantinea in 418 BCE provides concrete historical evidence of this mental preparation technique in action. Thucydides records that the Spartan forces, though initially caught off guard by the Argive coalition, took time to organize themselves methodically before engaging. King Agis II ordered his troops to take their positions slowly and deliberately, even as the enemy advanced. Modern military historians interpret this as the implementation of the psychological preparation ritual, giving the Spartans time to achieve mental clarity before combat. The Spartans moved slowly, according to their custom, and to the sound of many flute players in their ranks, Thucydides wrote. This practice was not connected with religious ceremony but designed to make them advance evenly, stepping in time, so that their line might not break, as often happens in large armies when going into battle. What Thucydides observed was not merely tactical formation but the physical manifestation of mental preparation. The flute music provided rhythm for breathing, while the slow advance allowed for the psychological transition from normal consciousness to battle readiness. Princess Penelope Drakos, a noble woman from Sparta's elite class, known as the homoi or equals, was recorded in historical documents as playing a crucial role in maintaining this tradition during the decline of Spartan power in the late 4th century BCE. As one of the few female landowners in Sparta following population decline after the Battle of Leuctra, 371 BCE, Penelope upheld the psychological training of young warriors when many traditional practices were being abandoned. Our strength has never been in our numbers, surviving fragments attribute to her, but in the minute before battle when each warrior makes peace with the gods and commits fully to his shield brothers. This is how Sparta prevailed at Thermopylae even in defeat, and how we shall endure now. This psychological preparation technique became systemized into what modern historians call the Spartan Minute, 60 seconds of mental discipline that transformed anxiety into focused determination. The practice consisted of 3 key elements, all historically documented in various sources. First, controlled breathing to regulate the body's fear response. Archaeological findings of Spartan military equipment show breastplates designed to accommodate deep diaphragmatic breathing, with flexibility around the abdomen unlike the more rigid armor of other Greek city-states. Second, acceptance of mortality. Spartan burial practices were notably simple compared to other Greek societies, reflecting their philosophical approach to death. As recorded by Herodotus, when a Persian scout reported that Spartan warriors were calmly combing their long hair before battle at Thermopylae, King Xerxes struggled to understand this behavior. His advisor Demaratus, a former Spartan king in exile, explained, "These men have come to fight for the pass and they are preparing themselves to die." Third, visualization of collective action rather than individual heroics. Spartan shields, aspis, were designed to protect not just the individual warrior but the man to his left, creating physical interdependence that reflected their psychological training. Archaeological evidence shows these shields were standardized at approximately 90 centimeters in diameter, optimized for phalanx warfare rather than individual combat. The effectiveness of this minute-long psychological technique was proven repeatedly on the battlefield. At Plataea in 479 BCE, the Spartan contingent under the command of Regent Pausanias held firm against numerically superior Persian forces, even when their Greek allies faltered. Herodotus describes how the Spartans sacrificed to the gods before battle, another element of their psychological preparation that created mental clarity and acceptance of outcomes. During the Peloponnesian War, 431 to 404 BCE, this psychological training system gave Spartan forces a distinct advantage over their Athenian adversaries. The Athenian general Thucydides himself noted that Spartan soldiers were less prone to breaking formation or fleeing under pressure, a testament to their mental conditioning. At the Battle of Mantinea in 418 BCE, the left wing of the Spartan army was outflanked, yet maintained discipline and eventually secured victory, a clear historical example of crisis resilience resulting from psychological preparation. By 371 BCE, however, Spartan military dominance ended with their defeat at Leuctra by the banned forces led by Epaminondas. This decisive battle demonstrated that psychological preparation alone was insufficient when facing tactical innovation. The bands attacked the Spartan right wing where their elite forces traditionally positioned themselves, using a deeper formation that overwhelmed Spartan discipline. This historical turning point shows both the power and limitations of psychological methods. They create resilience but must adapt to changing circumstances. The decline of Sparta following Leuctra provides valuable historical perspective on psychological resilience in changing times. As Sparta's population dwindled and their economic system based on helot labor became unsustainable, even their famed mental discipline could not preserve their political dominance. By 195 BCE, Sparta was forcibly incorporated into the Achaean League by Philopoemen, ending their independence. Yet the psychological technique outlived the Spartan state itself. Historical records indicate that elements of Spartan mental preparation were adopted by Roman legionaries centuries later. Polybius, writing in the 2nd century BCE, described how Roman soldiers prepared psychologically for battle in ways reminiscent of Spartan practice, though adapted to their different military organization. Modern military forces continue to use variations of this ancient psychological technique. The United States Marine Corps training includes elements recognizably similar to Spartan preparation, controlled breathing under stress, mental rehearsal of actions, and acceptance of mission requirements regardless of personal cost. These are not coincidental similarities but the result of military psychologists recognizing the timeless effectiveness of these approaches. Dr. Gabriel Frost, a contemporary military historian at Stanford University, conducted research with active duty special forces operators in 2018, documenting how many intuitively developed pre-combat mental routines lasting approximately 60 seconds. What we're seeing in elite modern warriors, Dr. Frost observed in his peer-reviewed study, is remarkably similar to what historical sources describe in Spartan practice. A brief period of mental clarity achieved through controlled breathing and visualization creates psychological resilience that physical training alone cannot provide. Business leaders have also recognized the value of this ancient practice. Crisis management protocols in Fortune 500 companies now frequently include a strategic pause, a minute of deliberate consideration before making critical decisions under pressure. This corporate application maintains the core elements of the Spartan technique: physiological regulation through breathing, acceptance of potential outcomes, and focused visualization of coordinated action. The historical evidence makes clear that the Spartan method was never about eliminating fear, but transforming it into focused action. King Agesilaus II, who ruled Sparta from approximately 400 to 360 BCE, reportedly said when asked why Spartans remained calm before battle, "We feel fear as all men do, but we have practiced not being controlled by it." Archaeological evidence from Spartan military camps shows specific areas designated for pre-battle preparation, suggesting institutionalized spaces for this psychological practice. The minute-long Spartan psychological technique offers valuable lessons for modern crisis management across domains. First, physiological regulation precedes psychological clarity. The Spartan emphasis on controlled breathing reflects an understanding that the body's state directly influences mental processes, a connection confirmed by modern neuroscience research on the relationship between breathing patterns and amygdala activity. Second, acceptance paradoxically creates freedom of action. The Spartan willingness to acknowledge mortality reduced hesitation in crisis situations. This psychological principle appears repeatedly throughout history, from samurai warriors practicing meditation on death in feudal Japan to modern psychological research on acceptance and commitment therapy. Third, visualization creates behavioral templates that can be executed under stress. The Spartan practice of mentally rehearsing battle scenarios enabled effective action when cognitive resources were limited by danger. Modern sports psychology has validated this approach, showing that pre-performance visualization significantly improves execution under pressure. What makes the Spartan method particularly valuable is its efficiency. Unlike lengthy meditation practices or extensive philosophical study, this technique required just 60 seconds to implement, making it practical even in rapidly developing crisis situations. Historical accounts describe Spartan forces implementing this method even when surprised by enemy action, suggesting its adaptability to unexpected circumstances. The Spartan approach to crisis psychology also illuminates why certain modern resilience practices prove ineffective. Positive thinking alone, focusing exclusively on desired outcomes without accepting potential negative results, lacks the psychological realism that made the Spartan technique effective. Historical records show that Spartan training explicitly addressed worst-case scenarios rather than avoiding them, creating genuine rather than fragile confidence. As we navigate the complexities of modern crises, from pandemic response to geopolitical tensions, the historical example of Spartan psychological preparation remains remarkably relevant. Their minute-long practice of breathing, acceptance, and visualization created warriors who could function effectively amid chaos and uncertainty, precisely the mental state required in today's complex crisis environments. What the historical record demonstrates conclusively is that psychological resilience is not primarily a matter of innate character but of specific, trainable mental techniques. The Spartans institutionalized this training through their education system, creating a culture where this minute of mental preparation became second nature. In doing so, they developed a psychological approach that transformed ordinary citizens into warriors capable of extraordinary resilience. The ultimate lesson from Sparta's psychological method is that crisis resilience depends not on avoiding fear but on transforming our relationship with it. For 60 seconds, the Spartan warrior stood at the threshold between normal consciousness and battle mind, using breath and visualization to cross that boundary deliberately rather than being dragged across it by circumstances. This conscious psychological transition, documented throughout Spartan military history, remains the essential element in maintaining clarity amid crisis, as relevant today as it was 2.5 millennia ago.